Hey gardeners, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, it is number 5 of the Growing Generations podcast. Welcome back this week for a new episode. We are starting this fresh new week with a new guest on our show. Today we'll be discussing about beginner vegetables to grow, especially for beginner gardeners. If you're interested in cultivating your green thumb and gardening, there's definitely some
Hey
things you
gardeners,
should
welcome.
keep in mind. So definitely we'll be discussing, both me and Enoch, which is our guest speaker over from the Urban Gardener. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave the floor to Enoch to go ahead and present himself, say who he is and what he does, and then we'll jump right into this live stream.
Awesome, Emmanuel. Thanks for having me here today on your Growing Generations podcast. It's great to be here with you and welcome everybody else here as well. I'm Enoch Graham. I'm from the Urban Gardener channel on YouTube and host of the Let's Get Growing show on the weekends. And yeah, we got lots growing on. I hope folks can get a chance to come over and check out what we've got growing on over there. But great to be here with you today to talk about beginning vegetables for beginners today. So I'm really excited about today's podcast. What do we got in store today, Manuel?
Definitely. And Enoch is definitely someone who I've worked with. I was invited to his show. I don't know how long ago that was.
One of the first ones. Yeah,
Yeah.
you were on our first few shows for sure.
When the show had initially started, and it was definitely a very fun experience. And so if you aren't following the Urban Gardener just yet, make sure to go ahead and follow it. All the information you need to know will be in the description box below. And we also have our amazing moderator, Jay Dixon, with us. She is going to be providing any type of links that we need or any type of YouTube channels that we mention. So thank you, Jay, for joining with us once again and being an amazing moderator. We do have another moderator in which I will present her as soon as she joins onto the chat as well. So let's go ahead and just say hi to a couple of people. I did see that we have the Wickershire Project off grid. He was here in the beginning. And we
Yeah,
also have David from the Bowtie Life in the Garden as well.
exactly. Thanks, David.
So David was actually on our show, I believe last episode he was on
Yeah.
where we discussed about tips and tools. And it was definitely a fun episode. So if you haven't checked that out yet, make sure you go ahead and do so because it is super fun. And so let's just go ahead and kick off this episode with veggies that we grow. So beginner gardeners, when it comes down to gardeners who are just starting off in our industry, they might be overwhelmed with the huge range of different plants that they're able to grow, and they don't know where or how to start. And something I came to realize when I started off gardening was I almost wanted to do everything at once, but I couldn't. So I
Hmm.
had to kind of narrow it down to vegetables that were meant for beginner gardeners. So they're way easier, they're low maintenance, they don't have common pest or diseases or anything like that. So to start off with beginner vegetables, I'm gonna go ahead and let Enoch say his top 5 vegetables he would recommend for any type of beginner gardener who are interested in starting to grow.
Yeah, well, top 5, I mean, really, really hard to do. I've got kind of a list here. I'll try to break it down to at least top 5. A lot of really, when we're thinking about beginner vegetables and things that we wanna grow, when we're new to gardening and all of that, we've really gotta really obviously be concerned about our different climates. I mean, for one, I'm all the way over here in the Northwest in Oregon. Emmanuel, you're down there in Florida. The difference of the sort of things that we can kind of grow is, a little bit different timing of year, those sort of things. So we got to put a lot of things in perspective of exactly what we're dealing with as far as our growing conditions are before we're really trying to pick exactly which ones. But for me and where I'm from and for most gardeners out there, a lot of simple ones. Um, one of my favorite things that I got started with when I was first starting to grow was very simple, very easy, and quick too. This is also really great for kids if you're trying to get kids into gardening as well too. These are our ultimate beginner gardeners, right, Manuel?
Yeah.
Are the kids out there? So radishes,
Mhm.
they're fast. They sprout quick, they grow quick, they're tasty, and they're also kind of like a multi-crop for me if I really think about it. We, you think of a radish as just just a little root crop that grows that one little radish, and then you harvest it, and that's it of the plant. But if we let that radish go, and we let it kind of bolt or go to seed, per se, we can let them grow and have like a second harvest of a cool little vegetable that most people don't even think of, and these are the little radish seed pods. So if you can harvest these little radish seed pods really young before the seeds start to develop, and they're really delicious. They work well in salads and all sorts of different things. So radishes is like one of my real favorite like beginner vegetables because it's just quick. There's a lot of uses for it. Again, too, we can let it continue to go to seed, and let those seed pods continue to grow out and harden up, and then we can harvest all those seeds. And during the wintertime, we can sow out those seeds into trays of microgreens, and grow microgreens from seeds that we save from our own radishes that we got. So, again, radishes probably be like one of my top uh, beginner vegetables to grow for sure. Um, Anything else you want to say about that one? Do we want to go one by one, or should I just lay them all out?
You can go ahead and lay them all out.
All right, all right. Next one, real easy, real easy. This one was one I remember again too when I was a kid and I was first learning about growing some things, and we were doing stuff in our classroom when I was in grade school and all of that. But our teacher had us plant out little beans in little cups, so we could watch the beans grow. Again too, they grow fast. They're pretty easy, low maintenance when it comes down to it. And the varieties, just tons and tons of varieties of beans and all sorts of beans you can grow. The plants are really awesome. So I think beans are a great another beginner garden crop to grow, because again, very easy, easy success when you can grow those. One of mine, I say though too, for me in my top five was because it was one of the first things that I grew because I was interested in just trying things that were different than regular seeds. You know what I mean? I think of regular seeds in the sense that we harvest up, but seed potatoes. I was really interested. Could I go to my supermarket, or could I get these potatoes, and could I chit them out and then plant them into my garden and grow out potatoes? And that was one of the first things I did when I was gardening and tried it. And it was easy. It was successful. It worked out really well, right in one of my very first beginning gardens. And I've been growing potatoes ever since. I get volunteer potatoes pretty much anymore from a lot of my little potato patch that I have. But I love potatoes for one as part of my top five. Of course, I've got to include cucumbers. I love cucumbers. They're one of my favorites, and they were my first. The cucumbers are what got me into all of this to begin with. Yeah, gardening, growing, sharing everything on YouTube, and all that. So all started with cucumbers. I love cucumbers, and as far as curcubits are concerned, if we can make sure we're either like direct sowing, or we're really not, we're really caring for them and making sure they're getting transplanted very quickly versus letting them sit in their containers, that sort of thing. So if we can make sure that we're giving a good transplant transition, or we're getting them directly sown into their gardens, I find that cucurbits do really well, whether it's squash, pumpkins, other things like that. They just, once they get going, they go crazy. They'll take over all over everything, and you'll get tons and tons of really great fruits. So I say cucumbers, but I guess we'll include all cucurbits in a sense when it comes to that. Where am I at? Where am I at? Number I think I was four. So five, I guess we'll have to give everybody's favorite. It's like the go-to for everyone. I've interviewed hundreds of people about gardening and growing, and the top plant that everybody wants to grow and grow each and every year are tomatoes, of course. And tomatoes, the varieties, the fun that you can get in all of the different types of plants and everything. So tomatoes, definitely a great beginner vegetable. Everybody loves growing them. Everybody wants to start with them. You're going to do it anyway, so it might as well be included in the top five for sure. I've got a bunch of others, but I guess that would be the top five.
We'll cover those later on once we hit your other top five,
Right,
your other continuing list, because I wouldn't want those to go unheard of.
right.
So we actually have 2% here who has been a follower of the channel for a couple years now, and they have a question. I live in an apartment and there's no sunlight on my side. Are there vegetables that could grow in little light? So I'll let you
Mm.
answer that one. I'll let you.
No sunlight. No sunlight is tough. That's
Mm-hmm.
tough for a lot of plants. Most, when it comes down to it, some shade loving stuff, really, greens, lettuces, as much as you would think, we call them greens, and greens need sun, to photosynthesize and all of that. But, they will do better in shade situations. Yeah. Those sides of the buildings are awful. I mean, I've had to live in a couple of apartments like that where it's like you don't get any sun or anything like that. You know, um, I would just try, a few different things to see what you can get and all that sort of stuff. But for the most part, I would say like some greens, lettuces, spinaches, maybe try a few different things like that for sure. Could work. That's just a tough spot to be in for sure, to not have any sun.
Yeah.
For sure. I feel you for sure. At that point in time, for me, I'm looking for friends, neighbors, and places where I could find a little strip, or maybe I can get on
Right.
down on the side of the apartment building or something like that. Maybe get up on the other side, get in good with the apartment manager or something. Maybe you can go into a corner of the landscape or something like that somewhere, put some containers or something, and get out into that sort of situation. Or find also, again, community gardens. I've always pushing community gardens, especially for folks who have hard growing situations or situations where you can't grow at all. Look into finding a community garden situation close to you. If not, maybe even start one. I'm sure there's tons of people who are in the same situation around you, other apartments as well, who would like to maybe even get together, partner up, and team up into
Right.
starting up something. And again, to work with maybe your apartment management or ownership or something like that. Maybe something can be done right at your location versus maybe down the street or somewhere at that point where you're looking into talking with the city or maybe other property owners.
Definitely. I would definitely also have to say it depends on where you're located, because here in South Florida during the summer or springtime, since we have very hot and humid times,
Mhm.
sometimes we actually grow our plants or veggies in full shade. In my case, I have to, like, right now I'm trying. It's a long shot, but I'm trying to grow like cucumbers, and that
Mhm.
is like a huge no-no. And if the second they hit sun, they're done. And so
Mhm.
something I'm trying to see if by growing them in the full shade, would it have really any difference? So I would definitely say also where you're located plays a huge part in it. But for the
Mhm.
most part in general, all your plants are required to have some type of sun.
Yeah.
Even if it's a couple of hours of sunlight, they still require some sunlight in order to grow, let alone produce for you to harvest. So I definitely
Mhm.
consider, like how like Enoch says, consider working something out with your local neighbors to see if you could use a little bit of their space and sunlight. So I've been
Yeah.
seeing some of the questions start rolling in. So let's go ahead and see. Okay,
Mhm.
right here. So David asked, which vegetables are the best confident boosters for someone just starting out?
Yeah, again, we go back to that top 5 there. I think those are like I mean, as far as, and that's kind of what I was doing when I was selecting that, was like, what do I think people are going to have the most success with right away? And in a sense, like you're saying, David, confidence boosters, things that you can grow, see some real good things. Like for me, when I did that, when I started my first cucumbers, and I got that little cucumber start from my friend, and I grew that out and everything. And it really did just grow. I put it in a pot. I stuck it out on my balcony, which luckily I had a balcony with sun at that one, at that apartment that I lived in at that time. And it just grew and took everything over, did pretty much everything itself. You know what I mean? What better confidence booster as a gardener than a plant that's just going to take over and do its own thing? And you can just watch it grow and watch it produce all of these great delicious cucumbers and everything too. So definitely those sort of things. Again, I'll include those lettuces, beets. There was another that's another one on my list that, you know, I have no trouble with almost any time. You just sow some beets out, those things grow like crazy and they do just fine. Um, a plant too that is different. I don't know, maybe more for the southern climate and everything too, that'll grow really well, grows really fast too. This was one of those ones where I sowed a seed and I was really surprised. Like I turned around like a couple of days later and there it was already growing and popping out, and I'm seeing true leaves like the next day and it's like going crazy. But that's okra. Okra is like a really crazy grower. It really grows well. Those plants just go nuts when it comes down to it, and fast growers. So that's a real confidence booster right there too, especially if you're sowing seeds, right? Because how many times are we sitting there like we sow some seeds out and then we're just sitting there every day like waiting for them to come up, just
Mhm.
waiting for it to come up. Come on, come on, come on, let's go. Come up, come up. And we go back to the next day. Come on, come on, come on. You know, what better one than to have some seeds similar like radishes and all that too, that pop up really quick, that are like, okay, wow, okay, good. They're growing. I don't have to worry about them. You know, that sort of thing. So absolutely those ones as well too. Corn. I would include corn in that as well. Maybe that's another good one. Fast, comes up fast, grows fast, all that sort of stuff as well too.
Definitely. In my case, when I started off gardening, the plant that I would grow every single season has been green beans, or bush beans, in other words,
Mm,
because beans are just phenomenal. They
yeah.
grow so quickly, they
Yep.
produce abundantly, and literally anyone can grow beans. It's hard
Hmm.
not to succeed at growing beans because of how easy they are. Myself, I just sow a whole bunch of seeds all over the garden. They come up, they produce, I save some more seeds and
Yep.
they're out for the season. That is definitely a boost of confidence right there. Beans have to be one, because I don't know who hasn't gone through that experiment with their teachers of putting. My experiment was putting a lima bean in a Ziploc bag
Mm.
and putting it up on the windowsill. That was,
Yes. That's
and
a good one.
so everyone kind of starts off somewhere. Beans is
Yeah.
one I would always recommend beginner gardeners.
Exactly. And again, too, coming back to what I was saying at first is what we're trying to do when we're selecting or thinking about a lot of stuff. We want to think about what climate, what is, where are we living and that sort of stuff. And with beans, I mean, come on, let's just find a good variety for your climate. All sort that, and that's a really great thing, about some of these beans and these sort of vegetables that have such a wide variety. Tomatoes, again, too, other ones, cucumbers, that you can find varieties that'll grow well in different climates. So beans are a great one for that for sure.
Definitely. So David also asks, for folks in tight spaces, balconies, patios, small yards, which beginner veggies grow best in containers?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to say that there's hardly, as far as the years I've spent growing in containers and all sorts of different things I've grown in containers and all of that, there's hardly things that don't grow well in containers when it comes down to it. That's one of the things I like to teach and show people through a lot of the stuff that I grow and everything. And especially we use these 5 gallon water wicking earth bucket containers in our gardens because they're really great for warm climates and all of that. It's a 5 gallon container, and with about 5 gallons of space, there's a lot of things that you can grow. Most everything I think we've listed or talked about, I've grown out of a 5 gallon container. Things I guess I wouldn't necessarily look into a container, I suppose, would probably be the better answer to this question, or things I wouldn't do, like big plants. Corn, I've grown like a stalk or two that have grown okay, didn't do very exceptional or anything like that. So, those sort of things that are going to grow big, tall, I would probably take okra off of that. Tomatoes, big fat. If you want a big fat fruit or something like that, I wouldn't necessarily put in a container. But most everything else, peppers, eggplants, cucumbers, all of the ones I've mentioned before, I've been able to grow very, very well, very successfully out of about a 5 gallon container. I wouldn't go much smaller than that though, even when it comes down to it. Some flowers, some annuals, some things like that we want to place around our garden in smaller containers and if we're willing to get out there and make sure that they're staying watered and not drying out and that sort of stuff. But I would say, go about 5 gallons and you can grow most anything in your garden space.
Definitely. And when it comes down to, I feel like gardening containers, I personally, since I do have a decent size, I wouldn't say it's so huge where I could grow a crap ton of trees. Mine's is more like the standard, more like that. And so I love growing in the ground. However, there's certain vegetables I have to grow in containers because they just cannot grow in our native soil. For example, I made a
Yes.
video the other day on the secret to growing potatoes in Florida.
There you
We all
go.
know that growing potatoes in Florida is a huge no-no because it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time for it to happen. Because if you grow potatoes in our native soil, they will come out so bad and the plants will not produce that well. So what I came to realize is by growing them in containers or by growing them in raised beds, it's in a controlled environment. So you choose the soil, the feed, the watering,
Hmm.
where in the garden they're placed. And since they're in a more controlled environment, you're able to grow them way more easier. So I
Yep.
would definitely say that container gardening is super fun. There's multiple gardeners out there who have released books on just container gardening or raised bed gardening. And so definitely go check them out and
Mm.
get some of their books because they have a lots of good information. I don't have one on the top of my mind, but I definitely do know there's some books out there that
Yeah.
have good information to offer. And so we'll go ahead and move on to the next
That's a
question.
great point, Manuel, is that, with container gardening, we're controlling a lot of
Mhm.
it, when it comes down to it. That's and a good reason too. And a lot of people who even have a lot of in-ground space and all of that still find that some things grow better in containers still. So, they still have containers around all of their garden spaces as well, because that's just the case. And especially for those of you, like you said, you got soil conditions that are just not conducive for certain vegetables. Yeah, you can control that with a container and be able to do that. So I'm a big fan of container gardening.
So David asked another question: are there beginner vegetables that don't do well in certain climates, but everyone keeps trying? So it's just like I explained. The potatoes is a huge one here in
Yep.
South Florida. It's something that experts do not recommend. However, me, I'm a huge experimental type of gardener. If I know something cannot grow in our area, I'm gonna first try a couple growing seasons to see if I could find my way around like a loophole to grow it. And in this case, I did find it with the potatoes. Of course, it won't grow so well and so abundantly like in different states, but it still can be done. So
Hmm.
there is a couple plants out there that are considered not able to grow in certain climates. But I feel like with a lot of experimenting and getting to know your garden and getting to know the details behind soil quality, feeding, watering, all of that, I feel plays a part in finding a loophole behind it. So how about you?
Yeah, I guess, as far as this goes, I'll pull one out of my top 5 that I picked here, and just mention, like tomatoes. I mean, they're wonderful. Again, they make the top 5 because everybody wants to grow them. We're all gonna do it anyways. There's some great varieties that do well in certain climates, and that's what again, too, I've had to make changes myself in my own garden to search out and find specific varieties that'll grow well in my increasingly hotter climate that's been changing year after year, getting hotter and hotter. So certain varieties that don't do as well in those more intense heat periods of time during the summertime and really slack off in their production, I've had to remove from the types that I grow out in my space. So I've had to go to more heat loving types of varieties. Again, too, they can be problematic in climates where it's a bit humid. If you're in a humid place, tomatoes can cause a lots of problems with blights and all sorts of issues and things like that as well too. That's where, like you're saying, similar situation with potato blights and stuff like that will happen because of humidity and things. I think that might be, the issue, I guess. So we talk about groupings of different vegetables. Nightshades in specific are probably a little more susceptible to these sort of situations when it comes to climates and different types of climates that we're living in, whether it's a high humidity, high heat, low humidity, low heat. There's all sorts of difference in what our climate is. And going back to really ultimately what we've got to do then is, if we want to grow tomatoes or we want to grow things, we either got to do, like you said, find another strategy of growing them, say in a container or something like that, or we've really, and maybe possibly together, both of them, but find that certain variety that's going to do better in our climates and be able to handle blight issues better if you're in humid places, heat issues better if you're in the hotter climates, and those sort of things as well too. So a lot of things come down to variety when it comes down to it. Some varieties of certain things will just grow better than others will in different climates.
Definitely. And so when it comes down, I just feel like it just comes down to research, seeing what plants grow
Mhm.
well in your garden and moving forward from there. But don't be disappointed if you try giving a plant a go and it doesn't do well in your area, because all of us have done it before. I've done it
Do
multiple
it. Yeah,
times, and we
I
try
do it every year.
until we can't no more. So
Mhm. That's
definitely. So
right. That's right. Just try it. Just grow it. I mean, if you, yeah, if you want to try it and grow it, do it. I mean, when it comes down to it, it might not be necessarily try and test some things to see if you can. If you do have kind of a better understanding of what its growing habits are, and you can kind of maybe do some season extension, or do some different things to protect it during the hotter part of the season. Those sort of things. Even if it is a little bit on the edge of whether or not it can be grown in your climate or not, give it a try anyway. See if you can do it. Have fun with it, because that's what gardening's about. As we say, it doesn't, don't worry about killing some plants. Get out there
right.
and do it, and get out there and do it. Test what your climate's about, test what kind of things that you can grow, and just have fun with it when it comes down to it.
Definitely. And if you kill a plant, just know that you're going towards success, because you'll learn from it and you'll go better
That's
from it.
right. That's right.
So exactly 2%. 2% says she that they feel like they know me a couple years, more than a couple years. Yeah, I think I met 2%. Woo! It's been a while.
Well, yeah.
I've
But it's
known
something, it is
him
something when you get into doing this, and after a while, it's like, wow, I've known these people for all
right,
this time already. I can't believe I got friends now. I'm looking at like 8 years ago, I started my channel and doing things. I'm like, wow, has it been that long, really?
okay, let's see. Moving on. I forgot to mention Shawnee Gross is here. Make sure to go check out her channel as well.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, let's see. I know I saw another question around here. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, but again, it's a really great idea to always be out there and encouraging new gardeners and all of that. So being able to help folks and understanding which vegetables and things that they can get started with is a really good, really important in a sense too, to be able to pass this sort of information on to folks who could really use it to get started. Because one of the things we really want to do in our gardening community is grow new gardeners and get new gardeners and come join along with us and show
Right,
them how much fun and what they can get from a garden. So again too, coming back to David's question earlier too, about finding these ones that really work well and can be early successes for gardeners too is important. Because yeah, it's okay to go ahead and kill some plants out there, but
right,
one of the best ways to keep a gardener though in the gardening deal is to get them to grow some things that'll be successful in their garden right from the get-go.
right. So just like how Jay mentions, we love putting other people's channels in the chat, because then we're able to give them an opportunity as well. And as well as, if anyone is interested in joining the Growing Generation podcast as a guest, feel free to reach
Yeah.
out to me via Gmail. We still have multiple open spots for people to actually join in. And so I definitely would love if someone would reach out so we could go ahead and have you as a set guest soon on this show.
Yeah. I see some folks in here. You got to get. I see Nicole. Nicole, I haven't seen her for a little while. How you doing, Nicole? Great to see you.
So David
She's
asked,
always fun to talk
right,
to. There's some
yeah,
folks
I
in
haven't seen
here.
Nicole in a while, but I know she's been a follower here on the channel for some time as well. So, what do you say to someone who's discouraged at their first garden didn't go as planned?
Oh, discouraged after their first garden didn't go as planned. That's kind of touching on some of the stuff we were just kind of talking about is, not to be afraid of, things going wrong in your garden. One of the things I always tell folks, who are just getting into gardening or starting their first garden. In fact, I've been working with my neighbors here. They just set up in their first garden in the back space. We've been helping them along throughout the growing season so far, and really is just again making sure you push that point of view that your first garden's not going to be your best garden. That's a big saying I really like, is that your first garden's not your best garden. It's your starter garden. This is where everything gets going. You get to, your first chance at learning about how plants are going to work in your climate, as we were talking about already, or all these different different aspects of gardening that, again, when you're getting into gardening. And I remember when I first started gardening, I thought everything was so complicated. I was like, oh no, all this stuff I've got to learn and all of that as well too. So another thing I like to tell people is that it isn't as complicated as it seems at first. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things I want to encourage people who are getting it started and they haven't had very much success in that first garden, is that things uh, um, will be a lot easier the next time around. You know what I mean? You've learned a lot now. You've had a chance to go through something and see what happens when you're doing this or that, or how things work within your own schedule of how you're doing things and stuff. So there are a lot of different aspects of how we got to look at how our gardens fit into our lives, how we're able to maintain them and care for them, and all that sort of stuff. So again, I would just continue to tell people ultimately that don't give up, that again to killing plants is not a problem. I remembered, again, my neighbor. She was first with some of her first plants. She was just really worried and like, oh no, I don't know if this one's gonna. I was like, don't worry about it. Move on to the one that's next, and that sort of thing, and go to your next best success. Go and go to the things that you're doing well with too, is right. Keep a journal maybe, or maybe take some notes real quick if you're just finishing up that first garden, and figure out what is it that didn't work out, what did work out, and then really kind of focus on those things that did work out, push those successes in your next season, and then kind of touch on those things that didn't work out, and then that's where you kind of dig in and do some more learning and some studying. Is there, what can I do a little bit better for this plant that I'd really like to grow in my garden and succeed at in this next season, that sort of stuff. But ultimately, all it really is what we're doing really is just encouragement. We're just throwing as much encouragement in any sort of way we can at a new gardener who's dealing with, again, uh, uh, tough situations that can arise in a beginner garden, for sure.
Definitely. And when it comes down to gardeners who feel like down when their garden isn't doing well, like how I
Hmm.
always tell every gardener, famous experts, professionals got to be that way because they kill plants. That's the way it happens. And so definitely don't feel ashamed or feel disappointed if a plant dies.
Hmm.
Know that you're actually doing better, because you'll get to take what you did wrong and you'll do it right the next time, and then you'll have success. That's how all of us gardeners grow in this industry, is by failure after failure after failure, and then that's when the successes start coming. But don't think that then after a couple failures you'll be successful the rest of the time. It's a huge learning experience. So we have
Yeah.
my gardening auntie here, South Florida Sunshine Tropicals. Make sure to go check out her channel. She is actually going to be a guest on the show soon, and we are working on a project together, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And so thank you so much for joining with us. She is our other
Yes.
moderator.
Awesome.
So let's see here. One more down, because I'm really delayed in this chat. A
I get
lot of
there too. Sometimes it's not as easy to keep up with that, huh?
questions. Thank you, Jay. She put the link for my garden announcing, so make sure you guys go check her out. Okay, let's see here. And as you mentioned, Nicole Smith Gardening as well. Go check her out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me keep scrolling down. Okay, let's see. Okay. So definitely, like how they were just discussing right now, Jay put my email up for you guys to check out. Make sure to email me. As a matter of fact, I actually have a slot open that came up on August 6th, I believe. So if you're interested in joining on the podcast and would like to share your experiences and gardening journey, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm a quite a quick responder. So if you would like to be booked for that day, please feel free to reach out and I will book you out on that day to share some knowledge with us.
Yeah.
So let's see. Oh, thank you as well for Carol for putting down the link towards my latest video, the best landscaping plants here in Florida. Everyone is all about landscaping. I think that's one of the biggest things we see here around South Florida is that every garden or every home has to have a beautiful landscape. So if you want to know what plants to use in your garden, go check out that video. Let's see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, I think I was off on that too. Oh, I see. Oh, this is opposite. Okay.
So Jay also said, gardening is both simple and complex in my opinion. I usually keep it basic for beginners, but indicate that there's so much more to learn. I agree. If you want to become a professional or consider a expert gardener, you have to dive a bit more deeper into gardening, more towards the complex stuff. But if you are just kind of wanting to do your basic, grow your own vegetables with this, nothing wrong with doing that either. That's more
Mm-hmm.
for following basic, more easier information.
Yep.
However, if you wanted to become a little bit more curious, like the most of us, you could dive into
Yeah.
the more complex things because gardening is way more than just growing a couple plants. I could say that
Yeah.
for sure.
I'll add to that and say that, one, it's kind of one of the, it being complex and simple, you know what I mean, is kind of one of the things I talk a lot about in this series I'm doing right now on my channel, the Ultimate Pepper Growing Guide series, that I'm doing, taking people through how I grow all of my pepper plants throughout the growing season. And one of the main things I'm trying to emphasize with this whole growing series is that we can grow things really simply without worrying about all these extra things, whether it's high powered LED lights to really pump up my starts and my plants indoors as I'm getting started indoors, or all of these extra things that I can do and add to soil and all these sort of things that really, when it comes down to it, and with my pepper series, I'm trying to emphasize that we can do things really simply and have some really great successes, grow some really nice plants, and harvest some really great fruits off of these pepper plants without all of this extra stuff, right? But
Mhm.
one of the things I also talk about in these videos too is that that's something you can do though. You get in and you learn and you start working some of these simple, easy ways to grow some of this stuff, and you start learning the simple stuff first and you start getting that stuff down, then there's no reason why not to go in and learn just a little bit more. What would do a little bit better,
Right.
okay, so I'm using some simple little LED lights that are inexpensive. What would be the difference between the plants with these lights versus some really high powered ones, and what happens there? So we can always kick our gardening up a notch, as I would say. We could kick it up a notch. We could go even bigger and better, as they would say, or I guess what M.I. Gardner was like, grow big or go home, or whatever. We could take that mentality with a lot of stuff, and really dig into research and what this works and all that sort of stuff. But one of the things I like to emphasize with gardeners, and especially new growers, is that things can be pretty simple just to get started, just to get going, just start planting things, see what they grow, how they grow, find those things, grow some of these things that we're talking about today that are, some good successful things to start with, and that stuff, and get going. And then start really digging into, okay, what are some of these other things I can do if that's the type of gardening you want to get into. For one, there's people who don't mind getting into all of the uh, um, I would say, like, fertilizing concoctions and all the different aspects of how you can do all these different things, combine this or do that and all that sort of stuff, which is great because there are some cool stuff we can add to our garden, we can make and do that are going to really pump things up to that next level, right? But really, when it comes down to just basic gardening and growing, it can be just really simple, and we can keep it simple unless we really want to go there. And that's one of the things I tried to emphasize with this pepper growing series is, yeah, I can grow with big power, high powered LED lights. I can go and do all this extra stuff and all of that and get all of this big, awesome, crazy, cool stuff. But if I'm just getting started gardening, I don't need all of that stuff, really.
Right.
Hmm.
And definitely, like when it comes down to, because like how I mentioned last time with David, I'm working on a project myself off screen, and it requires in-depth studies, because when it comes down to gardening, lots of us garden people who are wanting to dive deeper into gardening, which is actually going to be tied into our next question from David. Do you believe gardening teaches lessons beyond plants? What is one of those lessons for you? Is patience. When it comes down to gardening, I feel like you have to have so much patience. You have to have creativity. You have to be open minded. There's so many things that you learned while you garden, and
Yeah.
patience is one of them, because you can't expect your plant to grow from one day to another and you'll be harvesting on the third day. That just doesn't work like that. And so gardening is just a huge waiting game. And when it comes down to developing your garden, it takes a lot of creativity, a lot of your personal self to reflect on your garden. And when it comes down to gardening as well, you have to be open minded to try new things, to try new plants, to try new gardening
Yeah.
techniques. It's definitely a huge life lesson when it comes down to gardening. So I always tell gardeners or people, it's beyond plants. It's way more
Hmm.
beyond plants. It's not, it teaches you other things that you may not notice, but you are learning as you are growing. So definitely. How
Yeah.
about
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna say, that that is a good answer. Patience. It made me think about just something I was thinking about last night as I was watering the garden and looking at one of my plants that I have. I've got this pumpkin, and the pumpkins are not doing so well. I've been battling some squash bugs, just trying to take them down and all of that sort of thing. But I've got this nice wants to grow. It wants to go, and it's starting to really pull out and starting to vine now and everything. So I was thinking about it and how long it's been and how behind in its growth it is and all that sort of stuff, this poor little plant. But then I
you?
was thinking, just be patient. This thing's just now starting to stretch out. We still got a couple of months to go. Let's see where we go. Let's see what we get. And I was thinking about that as I thought about other plants in the past that I've had too, where it's like, I just don't think this is going to go well. I just don't think this plant's going to succeed. And then I turn around a couple of months later in the season and you're looking at this big monster plant that's doing really well. And, it just had to get through this little struggle and then it's doing really great. So, patience is a good one in the garden because a lot of plants are, really require a lot of that. Even going back to what I was saying about seeds, right? Right from the very beginning, seed starting starts right there, doesn't it? We need a little patience. We gotta wait, wait and wait until that thing pops up out of the ground and getting going. So it's going to be a whole long growing season when it comes down to it. So we just got to kind of take our time and roll along with these plants. One of the big lessons I think in the thing that I got out of all of this, and this is why I'm here today. This is why I do a show on the weekends called Let's Get Growing and all of that sort of stuff, what our big mission is and everything. The big lesson I got out of growing, because I started gardening just as something I was doing on my own. It was just something that, I talked to friends and blah, 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 this and that. And and it was like, oh, people would take a little bit of interest in what it was, but it was just something I got going on my own. But then when I started getting on, going online and starting to, again, to learn about some of these plants I wanted to succeed at growing at, and so I started learning more. And what I found was community. So,
Right.
well, here I thought, at first, as I was really growing and gardening in those first couple of years that I was growing, that I thought it was something more that was a solitary thing, that I was just doing this kind of thing on my own. And it was just something that and that sort of thing. And so I went at it just enjoying that aspect of it. But it was kind of the surprise to me in the long run was that as I started connecting more and wanting to learn more, I connected with more people, started, you know doing more local lessons and things with the local extension and doing things, what I found in the long run that gardening taught me was community.
Right.
Gardening taught me that that I wasn't alone out here growing things and trying to figure out all this sort of stuff. That there was just this whole massive amount of people out there that share the same interest, the same love and passion for growing plants and growing things that I did. And that was a huge lesson for me to learn, was that
Mhm.
I wasn't all by myself out in my garden growing. I had this whole community of people out there that was just waiting to learn about and to come connect with me and to come garden with me when it comes down to it. And that was a big lesson for me, was community. And I'm still trying to push that and teach that and talk about that, every chance that I can, because it's really the best part about gardening and growing, is finding all of you wonderful people out there who just make it so awesome to share and to participate in this wonderful community.
Definitely. So let's go ahead and move on a little bit more further down to these questions because I am really behind.
I know. It's it can
I'm like,
happen. It can happen when the conversation really gets going. Sometimes I've got to even just skip whole parts of it, and I hate to do that, but it's like, oh,
right.
what else am I to do here?
Right. Oh, Shani says gardening teaches less lessons about anger management. Chop and drop stuff on mulch, rip out a plant.
Right, that's a good one right there
That's a
too.
really good one.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, if you're having a frustrating day and
right.
and you need to get some energy out or something like that, that's a good time to go out there and pull some weeds or chop some plants that need just to come out. Things that just need to get out of the garden. You need to yank them, pull them, do whatever. Chop them down into your compost pile, all that, whatever it takes to get a little energy out. I mean, it's helpful. I mean, when we're using the garden for all aspects of our life.
Okay, let's see. Didn't go down. Oh, well, I reached the bottom. So if you guys have any more questions, make sure to go ahead and drop them in the comment section and we'll go ahead and answer them. So kind of moving back to beginner vegetables on our topic. When it comes down to growing vegetables, it's not only just about selecting the veggies you'll be growing, it's also about how you'll be growing those veggies. So give us a few tips or advice you would give on planting them, transplanting them, a care guide on those seedlings that you recently transplant. Give us like a more overall tips and advice on growing vegetables as a beginner gardener. What should you expect? What should you avoid? Things like that.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, in that sense, that's where, the better answer really is in specific things that we're growing, for tips and things like that. You know, Starting from seed, if again, here's a big thing for beginner gardeners and all of that. About a good way to succeed really is to maybe start from starts, that sort of thing. Get a get a leg up on the growing season, and bring some starts from your local nurseries, garden centers, and things like that. And that way, you'll again too, that'll be a good way to also start seeing easy early success with growing some things, except for, of course, like your root crops and things like that. The radish, my number one. This is going to be more of a direct thing and all of that, but you know again too, I find it hard to really, without something specific, but yeah, just really, I would say, just do some good research on those certain things that you want. Make a good list of the things that you want in your garden, out of all of the different types of vegetables and things that you can start out there. Figure out again too the difference between which ones are, like I say, like root crops, where you're going to direct seed them, versus things that you could possibly get as transplants. Um, yeah, and that sort of, be patient, like you're saying again too, is another thing, that we want to, you want to carry a lot of patience and be prepared for things to not work out as well. So again, patience, understanding that things aren't going to grow as well as you'd like to. Going back to what I was saying, that your first garden probably isn't going to be your best garden, and if it is just really awesome, then how awesome or is that to, be successful right off the bat. But again, to don't be discouraged if things aren't working out in the garden. I just can't repeat that enough. Don't be discouraged. Things is simple as a lot of us try to say things can be, that at first they can seem to be difficult. Don't be discouraged. Keep trying. Keep sowing the seeds. Keep planting things if you're not succeeding, and keep trying again. You'll find some success eventually when it comes down to it. I believe ultimately that every person out there has a green thumb in them. I don't believe in brown thumbs. We might because we get started and something might not work out, we get discouraged, and that's what that brown thumb terminology comes in, because we give up is what it is. And let's not give up. Just keep going and keep growing.
Definitely. And something just like Carol says, garden teaches you to give yourself grace and try again or move on to another plant. That is so true, because
Mhm.
gardening as a general is all about trying new things out with the old
Yeah.
and with the new, especially if you are
Mhm.
a grow your own food type gardener like myself and like Enoch. Something that we came to realize is that after every growing season, there's always going to be something new. Every growing season, that's why we do planning. And that's something we discussed a lot with gardener Scott in his episode. Was he does a lot of garden planning because every year there's new things flowing in the garden. So it's always something that I would recommend beginner gardeners to do, is to plan out their garden. After
Mhm.
one, kind of consider the first growing year or first 2 years of gardening. Use that as an experiment, research, see your area, your climate, your soil, everything, all the information you need, gather it in those growing seasons. If you want to try growing a plant or two, try doing so you can kind of get a grasp of how it is. But then after you gain some knowledge on your area, go for it, but plan out your garden. It has to be planned out, because if not, you will have an absolute mess in your garden and nothing will be well organized. So definitely consider doing some planning before jumping straight into it.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so once again, our guest speaker is Enoch Graham from the Let's Get Going live stream, or from the Urban Gardener channel. If you're not following him, make sure to do so. He, like how he has mentioned, he does live streams every weekend, so make sure to go ahead and check him out on his live streams. They're awesome, full of information, so make sure to check them out if you haven't already. And make sure to check out every gardener in this chat. I believe almost every
Yeah.
gardener on this chat is a creator, from Shawnee Grows, David from A Bowtie Life Garden. We are live in the same state, as well as my auntie from South Florida, Sunshine Tropicals. To who else is another person? The Wickershire Project Off Grid is another channel over here who's doing really good. So these are channels we're here to kind of grow along with each other, as well as Nicole Smith Gardening. We're all channels trying to grow to be something
Yes, that's
bigger.
right.
And that's what we do. So we see question from Shani. New gardeners almost always struggle with weeds. Let's talk about that. I agree. Let's go ahead and talk about weed control.
Yeah, let's say this first. Let's not let weeds be what discourages us from
Right.
gardening. This is something that, I hear from a lot of folks who, why they don't garden is, oh, the weeds, and the weeds are just other plants, and they just got to be maintained when it comes down to it. And again, like we were saying just a minute ago too, is that we could also use them as a way to kind of get out some frustrations and some energy from a bad day or something like that when it comes down to it. But weeds are a part of gardening. It's just something that we have to just kind of live with, in a sense, and understand that we can do a lot of things to manage them better, like mulching our gardens, and making sure that we're, doing certain things to mitigate their ability to grow in our garden. So mulching is a really big one to do. But again, I just say that weeds are a part of growing and gardening. Those seeds are flying around everywhere. You can pull them all out of your garden and get them all out, get everything nice and clean and looking nice and neat. And within that next day or two, more weed seeds are going to fly right in and plant themselves right into your garden. and start growing all over again. So it is a maintenance part of our garden spaces, and depending how we like to keep our spaces, some weeds are fine in some places, and I don't really bother with them, and when they're going, and I just kind of maintain the spaces that I'm growing in and all of that. But yeah, you just gotta get down and pull when it comes down to it in some spaces and some containers. But my biggest recommendation is to mulch. Find ways to do that. I've got lots of trees in my neighborhood, lots of neighbors who pack up all those leaves into bags every year and everything. So I take advantage of that time of year, bag up or mulch down actually. So I mulch down the leaves that I collect, and then hope everything's good. And then I'll keep those leaves throughout the season, so I can keep mulching my spaces and keep them piled up high to keep those weeds from being able to come up when it comes down to it. So yeah. But they are a part of growing, right? I mean, they are plants, and they
Right.
want to grow just like any other plant, just not the ones we want in our space.
Right. And I feel like when it comes down to weeding, that's something that here in Florida we deal with a lot. A lot of gardeners deal with here because as soon as you pull out, you'll have new ones growing in by the next day, literally speaking. So it's
Yeah.
definitely something that you kind of have to get used to. So something I did want to mention is when I believe it was live with David, if I'm not, or I don't know if it was the time I popped into your live stream, Enoch, or if it was with
Mm,
David, but I was discussing about my education. I was
yeah.
discussing about what I'm going to be studying in school. And as of right now, I am studying
Oh, you might
education.
have came on our community show or something, I think, just a little while
Yes,
back.
I
Yep.
believe
Yeah,
so.
we believe we
And
did talk about that because you just graduated this year.
yes, and I'm already pushing it forward with learning more stuff. And one of those things is getting to know education as a whole. And something
Yeah.
I come to realize is that education can also be tied into gardening because us gardeners, we teach other people about gardening lessons. We teach other gardeners how to do X, Y, and Z. And so since me, myself, and I am growing to be a educator in a future date, hopefully a leader and educator, I
Mhm.
decided it was going to be a good idea to document my journey because I have a huge journey ahead of me and I have a lot of good people around me or a lot of good connections that I know of that have lots of wisdom to share with myself and lots of people out there who are interested into getting into education. And so I did create a new page. I posted it about it on my communities page. Thank you, Shani had just posted it. I did
Oh,
create a
very
new
nice.
channel called Developing Leaders in Education. This channel will be focused on to me full blown discussing about my journey in education, everything in that spectrum. I have big ideas for this channel. I have big ideas of starting a podcast over there as well with educators that are in my area. So if you would like to support that channel, go ahead and go over there and give it a good subscribe to support the channel. But once again, that content will be more towards teaching and leadership and mentorship,
I
lots of
love it.
those
That's
weird
great.
types of topics that are more related to life lessons. So if you want to go ahead and learn a bit more tips on leadership, mentorship, go ahead and check out that channel. Has no content right now as I just created it. And so I'll be
Mhm.
posting on that very, very soon to document my journey from college all the way to
Awesome.
production. So
That's
we'll
great.
go ahead and accept any more questions. We'll accept one or two more before we wrap up. Thank you to our moderators, Jay, Shawnee, as well as South Florida Sunshine Tropicals for being amazing moderators. Definitely, like I mentioned before, if you're interested in joining onto our live stream, make sure you go ahead and email me. I am open-minded. I've actually invited gardeners who are just starting to kind of discuss about their gardening journey, a whole bunch of different things. So if you want to go ahead and join us on this podcast, we are a whole bunch of different gardeners here ready to learn and to learn from one another. And so definitely reach out if you are going to go ahead and planning to join us on the live stream to share
Yeah.
you know your experiences. So our final question is, what is in your kit to a new gardener?
What is in my kit? Like if I was to get like gift kit to someone of things for gardening, definitely, of course, is going to be some seeds. We got to have some seeds in there, maybe a couple of starts. We'll go back to that. We'll give some starts and seeds in there. Maybe, of course, we're going to get in some tools. Got to have some tools if you're going to get into gardening, right? Maybe some gloves. Wear your gloves for sure.
Right.
Another one too, oh, you know what? Here's something I would put in a kit for new gardeners. One of the things that I was doing and bring this one up, which is weird why it came into my mind right now. But thinking about stuff the other day as I was filming something, but mixing soil. I do a lot of soil mixing and stuff like that, or I do a lot of stuff out there and everything too. Wear your masks when you're doing that stuff. You know what I mean? When I come, so I would put that in there too, man. So I see so many gardeners out there tossing things around, where they got perlite and rocks and things flying and dust that we're breathing up and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know why that one came to. I would put that in a kit as far as tools, gloves, that sort of stuff, and then of course some books. We want to throw some books in there. Get some books in there, and again too. It'd take me a few minutes to really think of what one specifically, but I would throw in some good gardening books in order to get a new gardener growing for sure as well too. So I think that was about that. That'd make a nice little kit.
Definitely. So for me, it would more just like how Enoch says, seeds. I definitely give them a little bit of. If you live here in Florida, I'd give them a little bit of neem oil, because since we do a lot of pest control here,
Yeah, there you go.
plant-based plant-based control here, or the water and soap-based things here. I don't really do nothing so chemically. I'd give them garden gloves because they need that plant tags, because when you start those seeds, you will not remember what
Yeah.
seeds you planted, so you need them plant tags.
Oh,
So
the
you
hoary she meant. That's perfect. I saw that
different
there.
castings. I'll throw it all in there. I'll put my garden in a kit for them.
Yep. That's great.
Lord
Exactly.
have mercy. The Wickshire Project Off Grid said, nothing more fun than pulling ivy and some meh who needs gloves. I enjoy the burn. Oh,
That's
Lord.
right. That's right. Oh my. Ay, ay, ay. And they got those cool sleeve things too. There's
Yeah.
nothing worse than getting in there and I'm kind of cutting back, like, and it's curcubits do it to me like really bad. So I'm in there cutting like suckers or getting in there harvesting or doing something. And if I don't got something covering my arms, they will rash out so bad. So those sort of things. Maybe I put one of those sleeve kit things in the kit as well too. Those things.
Alrighty.
Right
So,
on. One other thing though, too, I want to make one honorable mention. It's not a vegetable for beginner gardeners before we head out too, but herbs. That's
oh,
a good
yes.
beginner one for beginners, really. Some good perennial herbs, mints, oreganos. You get some lavenders, some, all sorts of different fun, cool herbs, thyme, marjoram, whatever, all these sort of really cool herbs, whatever you really like to cook in your recipes and all that sort of stuff. Those are really great beginners for beginner gardeners as well too. And a lot of them can be perennial growers where you get them started once and you ain't got to worry about it again, and they'll just keep
Right.
growing. All you got to do is maintain them, keep them clipped back and all that sort of stuff, and they're really great to go. So that's a good one for beginner gardeners too.
I agree. And I did also come out with a beginner's guide on growing herbs. So if you're interested in growing herbs and you haven't tried it already, make sure to go ahead and check out that video. So thank
Excellent.
you all so much for joining with us on this episode. Thank you everyone for being very conversational in the chat. I really, really appreciate it. If you haven't already, leave a like underneath this video, as that helps with supporting the live stream as a general. And a huge thank you to Enoch for joining with us on this episode. It has been an amazing time that I have spent here discussing your gardening journey and your gardening advice with our viewers online. So thank you once again for joining, and make sure you stay tuned as we have another guest coming next week. Let me see who it is. It's actually a good friend of most of us. We have James Growing Garden joining with us next week on the show. So make sure to go ahead and
Awesome.
check us out next week, Wednesday at 2 p.m. EST, as we'll be discussing about growing garlic. So make sure to go ahead and join us then. So once again, a huge shout out to our moderators, Jay, Shawnee, and my auntie, South Florida Sunshine. Tropicals for being huge supporters of their channel. And once again, as you guys know, YouTube did a new thing where they are crowning the most top.
Right. Yeah.
And so, first crown goes to Jay. The second one goes to the Wickershire off-grid project, and the third one goes to Shawnee Grows. So, thank you guys for being very participative in the conversations in the chat. So, thank you once again for joining with us, and we'll go ahead and see you guys in the next episode.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you later. Goodbye.